Welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. We are your hosts, Rashid Muhammad and Rashid Nasser. How's it going, brother? Your mouth. Hold on one second. Let me unmute you. There you go. There you go. Go ahead.
We're doing just fine, Black. We're doing just fine. The first thing I want to say.
Hold on one second. He's in the building. We got him. He's in the building right now. Let me bring him in too. Let me add him to the screen. How are you doing today, Mr. Kevin Barrett?
Hey, very well. Alhamdulillah. How are you guys?
We're doing pretty good. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for accepting the invite. And again, I want to apologize to you for the email when I didn't get back with you and all that stuff like that. But
hey, no problem. Well, it's good to be with you. Now, are you guys both Rashid?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
Yeah, Rashid and Rashid. So I want to. Would you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your history, your website, and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. My name's Kevin Barrett, and my PhD is in African languages and literature. Arabic was the language, focusing on North Africa, especially Morocco, where my wife is from. And I've been Muslim since 1993. Once I got into it, I said, I better learn how to read Quran so I know what I got myself into. So I went back to school and got that PhD with Arabic as a language. And I finally got to the point where I can actually read Quran after all of these years. So anyway, in 2004, actually the very end of 2003, as I was finishing up my PhD at University of Wisconsin-Madison, I heard that Dr. David Ray Griffin was working on 9/11 and saying that it was a false flag inside job. They blew up the Twin Towers and so on and so forth. I checked it out. It was true. And it was obviously true. And I got pretty upset and started doing teach-ins at the University of Wisconsin. Then in 2006, as the movement was picking up steam, the bad guys, Karl Rove and Bush and those guys, came after me because they needed a professor to pick on to try to stop scholars for 9/11 truth. So I got in a big fight with Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly and people like that on Fox News. And that pretty much made me unemployable in the universities. So since then, I've been doing my own thing, writing books and articles, being a freelance journalist and freelance scholar.
Okay, so let's attack an issue that you just brought up, 9/11. What's your take on 9/11? And then we'll move upwards towards the political situation in America today, and then we'll talk about the Middle East, and then we'll talk about RCEP and the growing Asia trade and boom. So what is your take on 9/11?
Well, 9/11 is it's one of those things. It's like the JFK assassination. It's a huge crime, a coup d'état done by very powerful people who largely control our government and media. And that's why they're able to get away with doing it in such an outrageously in-your-face way. Like with the JFK assassination, I mean, you're probably too young to remember that. I am too. I was 4 years old. But this mafia hitman, a known mafia hitman named Jack Rubenstein, otherwise known as Jack Ruby, walked through a parting sea of Dallas police officers to murder the alleged lone assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, on live television. Okay, so the whole country watched this, and yet we're told, no, it's just this lone nut that got shot down because Jack Ruby felt sorry for Jackie Kennedy. This was so insane that anybody believed that. I mean, I know that a lot of the African American community didn't, but you're forced to believe it if if you're going to work in this town in the journalism and academy. And so, same thing happened with 9/11. They blew up Building 7 in broad daylight at 5:23 in the afternoon on September 11th, 2001, and they announced it was going to be blown up, taken down, and on radio, the police radio had a countdown: 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, boom, and this building disappears at free fall, right? And then right after that, the overinsured landlord of a month and a half, Larry Silverstein, confessed that he demolished it. Later, Larry would then go to court and collect $750 million on that very building that he confessed he demolished. And he said, no, it was a terrorist that somehow took it down. Well, wait a minute. The terrorists didn't come anywhere near that building. And in fact, there weren't any terrorists. These two remote control planes hit the two towers. how did that make Building 7 come down, 7 hours later? So Building 7, like the Jack Ruby thing in 1963, was so obvious that anybody should be able to see that there's a huge problem here. And little by little, people started to see it. The media wouldn't publicize Building 7 at all. So most Americans didn't even hear about it for years, if ever. So anyway, it's one of those cases where there's a coup d'etat, and the coup d'etats can happen in any country. Certainly they can happen here just like anywhere else. And they have happened a few times. A number of our presidents have been murdered. Roosevelt was murdered by insiders, and Kennedy, of course. And then 9/11 was a policy coup. The neoconservatives, backed by the state of Israel, wanted an excuse to hijack the American military to destroy Israel's enemies. And certain folks in the military-industrial complex apparently thought that would be great because they would make a lot of money. And likewise, the drug dealers and money launderers who wanted to get into Afghanistan and get that poppy, and the Taliban had shut down the opium, so it was time to start that up again, right? So these kinds of forces orchestrated this. So that's really what 9/11 was, and they've been lying to us outrageously ever since.
Yeah, on 9/11, and I'll say this, and then I'll let Rashid say something too. What about the thermite, and how is it possible for steel to melt from the explosion of planes, and at the same time, passports drop down on the ground, unburned, unscathed, with all of the so-called terrorist names and pictures on them? How is that even possible?
Yeah, it's crazy. The eyewitnesses talked about rivers of molten steel flowing beneath the rubble of the towers, and there was still molten steel there months later. Now, office fires cannot come close to melting steel. It can't happen. And the New York Times published an article on Building 7 talking about the fact that not only had that steel been melted, but it had actually been vaporized. The steel remains from Building 7 looked like Swiss cheese. And to vaporize steel, we're talking, I forget exactly how many, like 1,000 degrees, like 5,000 or 6,000 degrees. The very most powerful high explosives maybe could do that. So yeah, it's and then of course that magic hijacker's passport that was miraculously discovered, just like they miraculously discovered a passport at Pennsylvania in that alleged crash site of Flight 93. They planted their evidence in a really sloppy way around 9/11. I mean, the whole thing is just really sloppy. The guys they picked as the so-called hijacker pilots couldn't even fly Cessnas, much less big jets. And these guys were supposed to be pious Muslims, radical extremist Muslims. And in fact, they spent all their time running around with unlimited supplies of military supplied cocaine, gambling, flying to Las Vegas on gambling jaunts, spending a lot of time with Jack Abramoff on his casino boats, and drinking like crazy. The Hebrew-speaking imposter who pretended to be Muhammad Atta in Florida was dating a pink-haired stripper named Amanda Keller, and she described how he was fluent in Hebrew. And she described how he was a loud-mouthed braggart and a psychopath who disemboweled her pet kitten. Now, the real Muhammad Atta was a very shy, quiet, and pious young man. So and he didn't speak Hebrew. So it wasn't the same guy. So basically, the way they planted their evidence around 9/11, it all totally fell apart. But nobody could see that, or you had to go to a lot of effort to study the case to find this stuff out. The mainstream papers would publish it once. They would say, oh, these hijackers were not really pious Muslims. They were hard-drinking, cocaine-snorting party animals, and that's it. They left an alcohol-soaked Quran on the bar the night before they hijacked those planes. That's in the Wall Street Journal. What kind of pious Muslim does that? Before he meets Allah? I don't think so.
Okay, Rashid, do you have anything to say? Because I definitely do. I have a follow-up question.
I wanted to say Jack Rubenstein. The mainstream media somehow leaves that out.
Yeah,
they cut off his name, didn't they? I wonder why they would do that.
I wonder why.
So do you believe that this move by the neocons to usurp authority and to control the Pentagon, do you think that was a move to to not just radicalize American society against the Muslims, but to wage a war on Islam?
Absolutely, yeah, because the Zionists are really waging a war on Islam. We have to remember that Palestine has been Islamically administered Holy Land essentially ever since Islam existed, since the year about 650. And as we remember that, the first revelation of Islam, in the Miladi year was the year 622. So this was just one generation after that the Holy Land was opened to Islam, and it was administered by Muslims for everyone, for Christians and Jews as well. And that's the way it's been, except for a couple of moments where crusaders came in and slaughtered everybody and held on to it for a little while. But it's basically been a Muslim-administered Holy Land forever, since Islam existed. And so when the Zionists came in and ethnically cleansed Palestine, butchered and expelled the people, destroyed most of the churches and mosques, this was a war on the whole religion of Islam, which has been administering this holy place where there's the Dome on the Rock and the Masjid al-Aqsa, which is the spot where Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, rose through the heavens to the presence of Allah, which is the ultimate spiritual moment, really, in Islam. And the fact that Islam is the final revelation of the same God that the Jews and the Christians worship is symbolized by this Islamically administered Holy Land. And now that's been wiped out as the Zionists have come in and are committing genocide in this Holy Land. And so they've declared war on Islam, and there's also a war on Christianity as well that most Christians don't even seem to notice. But when 15 million Jews, and most of them don't even believe in God, claim they have the right that this God that they don't believe in gave them this land in perpetuity thousands and thousands of years ago, so they have the right to commit genocide there and make it a so-called Jewish state. Against the wishes of the world's nearly 2 billion Muslims and 3 billion Christians. That's the majority of the world's population is a universal monotheistic population, either Christian or Muslim. And yet all Christians and Muslims have essentially been given this gross slap in the face by atheists posing as Jews, who are committing genocide in the Holy Land. So this is a religious war. It always has been. And the Muslim world has never been ready to accept this Zionist genocide of Palestine. And so they know that they have to neuter the religion of Islam and the people of Islam in order to keep their project going. And they want to ultimately set up what they would call their Messiah, who will be the Antichrist, or the Dajjal for Muslims and Christians. They want this so-called fake Jewish Messiah to be put on the throne in the rebuilt blood sacrifice temple after they tear down the Al-Aqsa Mosque. That's the long-term project. And so that's 9/11 is one step towards that.
Well, why do you think that they don't? Well, we all know, but I have to ask this for the people that will be watching this later. Why do you think that no one is informed that most of the so-called Jews are not even from over there? They're from Europe or from the Balkan, I would say Eastern Europe.
Right. Yeah. We're not told that because there's this myth that the idea Judaism kind of sometimes it presents itself as a religion, so you can convert to Judaism and become a Jew religiously, although it takes a certain amount of doing apparently. But then sometimes it's presented as kind of an ethnicity or a tribe, and you're just born into it, and they use it one way or the other way as it suits their purpose. So the issue here is that when they're saying it's a tribe, then they're saying that our ancestors were chased out of this land, and this is our tribal land from thousands of years ago, so we want it back, basically. And the fact is, of course, that the vast majority of the world's Jews, and certainly pretty much all of the Jews who planned the Zionist project, they're all white Eastern European. They had nothing to do with the Holy Land. They're no more, Palestinian than you or me. And those people are descendants, for the most part, of Khazars and people who were converted to Judaism in Southern and Eastern Europe. And so that population of these white European Jews did become, it was actually oppressed, and they were the lower class Jews. Most people don't know that, but the white European Jews, the Khazar related Jews, were actually second class Jews, and the upper class Jews were the Sephardic Jews from Spain, because the world's richest Jews, who controlled a lot of the trade, including the Atlantic slave trade and the rum trade and the sugar trade and all of that, those people were based in Spain, and they were the people who got chased out of Spain and Portugal and so on and so forth. So here in the United States, people don't know this. You go to New York and you hang out with the Jewish community, and you'll find out is that the people who consider themselves really the highest class of the Jews are descended from Sephardic Jews and Sephardic families. And they look down their noses a little bit at the Khazar Jews, the white European Jews. And so that's kind of it's a little different, because we always are conditioned to think that, like, the white people always think that they're on top of everything. But within the Jewish community, it's kind of the opposite. It's actually the Sephardic Jews are closer to the Arabs, and they're actually, historically anyway, the upper class Jews.
Mm-hmm. So now let's transition to the chaos in the political system of America today, and the environment of madness that has prevailed over America, especially in this so-called democratic process that's going on in America. What do you think about what's going on right now with Donald Trump, Joe Biden, and the so-called left and right? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Well, I think it's a big show. I hear you. My internet is frozen. Let's see here.
Okay, I can hear you. Yeah, your face is frozen a little bit, but I can hear you. Let's see if you can. Okay, now you're good.
Okay.
So
yeah, I think we had a brief internet glitch.
Okay, well, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the climate in America today in her political process, especially when you're talking about Trump and his faction and Biden and his faction and the so-called left and right, especially as chaos reigns supreme across America? What do you think about today?
Well, it looks like there's some kind of divide and conquer operation going on, where they're polarizing the situation, and this extreme polarization is it seems very artificial to me. The Trump side is a lot of that is driven by anger. The working class people no longer have good jobs the way they did. Like when I was a kid 50 years ago, ordinary folks could work in factories, drive truck and things like that, and make a pretty good living. One guy could support a big family that way. Today, it's much harder. And so a lot of people from working class and middle class people are feeling dispossessed, and of course the rich are taking everything. They're getting richer and richer. So there's a lot of anger out there. I think the oligarchs, the billionaires, want to confuse us and get us angry at other ordinary people instead of at them. So I think they've done this divide and conquer thing and are stirring up and polarizing the situation. And so the Trump movement on one side and then this anti-Trump fanatical movement on the other side are kind of set against each other. And all of that leads to ordinary people fighting against each other rather than waking up and saying, these billionaire oligarchs are planning to get rid of us. They don't think that the planet can support 7 or 8 billion people very long. And they're probably planning to find a way to depopulate the planet. And so we're all in their crosshairs. And this, thinking that it's the fault of the Democrats or the Republicans, that's really just a big show. It's, I think it's kind of like professional wrestling in a way, where they look like they're beating up on each other, but it's all staged.
So, why do you think that Trump supporters are so gung-ho for him, thinking that he's going to so-called drain the swamp and fight against the so-called system, when he has actually come up through the system and been one of his main beneficiaries and benefactors. And on top of that, F. William Engdahl said that Trump was a tool of the system, and I'm paraphrasing him. And if he had ever stepped out of line, he would never have gotten the position that he got, and they would have killed him immediately. So,
yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, he's right. Engdahl is right. And I don't know why people have fallen for Trump. It really puzzles me. Very smart people I know, comrades in the 9/11 truth movement, good people, have fallen for Trump. And my friend Jim Fetzer, he used to do False Flag Weekly News with me. And then he drank the Trump Kool-Aid and, really got out of control. And now he was replaced by Professor Anthony Hall of the University of Lethbridge. And now Tony's starting to get inebriated on that Trump Kool-Aid. So I don't know what's going on here. Trump is the idea that Trump is going to drain the swamp. Donald Trump, excuse me, he's the guy that was created by Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn was one of the slimiest, most corrupt mafiosi in American history. Right. He ran New York for Meyer Lansky. He took orders from J. Edgar Hoover. Meyer Lansky, the mobster and Zionist, a very good friend of Israel, had dirty pictures of J. Edgar Hoover, who had dirty pictures of all the other powerful people in America. So Lansky issued orders to Hoover, and Hoover turned around and relayed those orders to various people in the big cities, and New York was Roy Cohn territory.